To get really good at coding, you have to have really good foundations, meaning you have to have a system that allows you to either get started in the right way and or continue sharpening those coding skills as you progress in your career, in your journey. And so with that, you have to have a plan. You have to have a set of tools that will allow you to be successful at absorbing the knowledge, the programming, coding knowledge, but also learning how to deal with challenges that come along, such as imposter syndrome, bugs, lack of progress, and many things that come with programming. And so I decided to put together a mini course, a short course, not too long, where I give you all the tools that you need in order to become successful at programming. It's not about coding itself, it's about the mindset, it's about setting yourself up for success. And this is something I've been seeing for a very long time. After 10 years of teaching online and 250,000 students later, this is a course that I wish I had created years ago. I think it would have helped a lot of my students. But nonetheless, I have it now for you. Now, one thing I have to tell you is that there is a bonus at the end of this video, of this course. In order to get to that bonus, you have to watch the entire course and get to the end, and then I'll give you the bonus. So go through the process, learn a lot about the mindset that will get you from being here to being right here, or maybe there. Well, you can't quite see. You get the idea. Okay. All right, let's get started. So in the coming videos, I want to talk about certain topics that I think are very important, especially when you are either starting your journey in the tech world, or maybe you've been in the tech world for a while and you want to learn a little bit more about the process, the mindset process that is involved when it comes to becoming the best at what you do or at what you're learning or aspiring to do or be. So that's why I decided to put together this coding mindset from novice to the tech entrepreneur. And I understand some of you don't consider yourself entrepreneurs, but I believe that we're all entrepreneurs. So let's talk about the structure of what we're going to be looking at in the coming videos. So the first thing here is that we're going to look at building a growth mindset in coding. And as I said, it's very important to understand certain things, or what I would call soft skills, when it comes to if you want to embark on this journey of tech, coding, learning how to code, or even enhance your coding skills. We're going to start by building a growth mindset in coding, and then we're going to talk about how to navigate the learning curve, because it's important to understand that if you're in tech, learning is the de facto way of living, because you're always going to be learning. And next, we're going to leverage the community and networks. We're going to learn how to leverage the community, our network, how to collaborate with others, which in turn will enhance our knowledge, make us become even better developers, programmers, software engineers, what have you. And then we're going to look into how to transition to the tech entrepreneurship. So you may not consider yourself an entrepreneur, but I believe we all are entrepreneurs. And so trying to figure out this transition between where you are as a developer, beginner, or somebody who's been doing this for a little bit or is transitioning, and to get to the point where you can actually have the skills to pretty much do whatever you want, either go get a job or become an entrepreneur. But now you have those skills. And we're going to learn about navigating the tech ecosystem as an entrepreneur. As I said, there are many applicabilities with the skills that you're going to be learning, which is coding, programming in general. So how to navigate the tech entrepreneurship once you have those skills. So that's an overview of what we're going to be looking at in the following videos. Okay, now let's talk about growth mindset in coding. Now, it's very important to understand this concept because it governs everything we do. First of all, we need to look into, okay, what is mindset? I look at mindset as the driver of everything that you do. So mindset essentially is the way you perceive the world, is the way that you show up. And some people would say that it's even the way that you react to certain situations. Attitude that you have towards certain things in your life, the way you view the world. It's all about perspective. So that is indeed what mindset is. All of that. So all of that is driven by the mindset. So it's important to really tap into mindset if you want to be successful at programming, particularly, but in general in life. Now that we have some ideas of what mindset is, let's go ahead and look at growth versus fixed mindset. So imagine that you have these two separate things, separate balls here. One is fixed mindset and the other one is growth mindset. So what are the differences here? The fixed mindset believes in a few things. A fixed mindset believes that all of your abilities are innate, meaning that you were born with them. You can't do much about them. So the fixed mindset believes that everything is fixed. You can't really change because everything is fixed. If everything is static, if we were to use the programming words, which means, you can't really change. Maybe you can change a little bit, but not much. You can't be smarter than you are. So it's all fixed. It's all given. Okay, so that is the vision. Whereas when you look at the growth mindset, then things are different, right? With growth mindset, the abilities in this case can be developed, which means you can learn, you can be better at whatever it is that you do. But all of this is through hard work, persistency, perseverance, and all these great qualities about getting what you want to get. So essentially, the person with a growth mindset is a person that believes that sky is the limit, meaning that I can pretty much do anything I want to do because I can mold myself. I'm malleable. I can learn things. I can be better. Nothing is set and written in stone. Okay, so that is the difference between fixed mindset and the growth mindset. Now, what is the impact of fixed versus growth mindset when it comes to learning? So if you have a fixed mindset, everything is impossible, right? So everything is impossible to learn. Everything is really hard. Why try? Because there's this attitude of, well, I can't do X, Y, and Z because I already have something that is set for me. Okay, so that is the problem with this fixed mindset when it comes to learning. So a fixed mindset person would say something like this: well, coding is only for the really smart people. It's for people who have this brain capacity that I can never possibly have. Whereas when we look at the growth mindset, things are different. If you were to tell something like this, hey, go ahead and learn quantum physics for a growth mindset person, that person would not shy away from it. Far from it, right? That person may say, okay, I have no idea how this works, but I will go and learn anyway. There is a difference. And so you want to have, obviously, the growth mindset, especially when it comes to coding, because it is the driver which will make you a real good coder or a real bad coder, because you've got to have that growth mindset, especially in coding, because things can get hard, things will get hard. And so you have to have those tools of growth mindset, not fixed mindset. So when it comes to having a fixed mindset, is that then you have these challenges that come with it, both ways, right? Fixed and growth mindset. But fixed mindset has a lot more challenges because they tend to give up easily and they tend to blame on everybody, and they feel as if though they have no control over anything because everything is set. Everything is already established. Therefore, I will just give up because it's too hard. Whereas a person with a growth mindset here, when they encounter problems, they actually are invigorated by it. They are intoxicated in a good sense because they want to learn from it, right? They want to embrace those problems. They work harder and they look for the knowledge gap, meaning that if there's something that they don't know how to do, instead of thinking, well, I don't know what to do, so let's just give up, they say, okay, that means I don't know something, which means I need to go and figure out ways to learn what I need to learn to close that knowledge gap so that I can perform and be better at what I need to do, which essentially is the best skill that you could have. So it's always the concept of, okay, this is hard, but I will figure out a way to get this to work. And the growth mindset fosters what I call ownership. They have total ownership of their successes, their failures, and everything around it. They're not blamers. They say, okay, I have the tools, maybe not now, but I can learn those tools to get the job done. So what I want you to do now is to do a little activity on growth versus fixed mindset. So what I want you to do is to look at this fixed versus growth mindset, and I want you to list in a piece of paper or whatever you want to write, list all experiences where you gave up, number one, and another experiences where you persevered, where you actually went through, worked hard, and won. And I want you to look at each one of those situations and discuss, could be with yourself or somebody else, and write it down. What mindset were you in or were you demonstrating in each of those cases? Okay, so do that exercise, because what this will do, it will kind of help you internalizing, start seeing differences between the fixed versus the growth mindset. Now, why is this so important? Well, this is important because when it comes to programming or anything really, but we'll talk about programming here, you have to be aware of certain things. You have to have these tools that will allow you persevere when things get really hard. A fixed mindset, when things get really hard, slightly hard, they give up because they can't do it. A growth mindset, as you know by now, they don't give up. At least not easily, because they know if they can't do something right now, it's because perhaps they don't have the knowledge yet. So they go seek for it. Okay, so do this exercise and I'll see you next. A few people in history of computers and programming come to mind. One of which is Linus Torvalds. He is the founder of Linux. So he created the operating system Linux. What's interesting about Linus Torvalds is that he was just a CS student, a computer science student at university, when he had the idea of creating this new operating system. Now you have to imagine here how much willpower it takes somebody to think about creating an operating system. And of course, he started doing all of that work by himself. He started coding this project called Linux, and where we know of Linux today, all by himself, right? So he had to go through a lot of adversity, a lot of difficulties to be able to do this huge task, which means he had to spend countless hours coding, debugging, going back to code, debugging, making sure things are working. Sometimes, as you know, things don't work, and learning and doing all these things just to keep improving the system he was building. So it's all about the vision. And because of the nature of programming, he had to go and publish his findings, what he was working on, because he needed help, right? So he realized that even himself, as a very smart person who had all of the tools, or at least had this growth mindset of tackling such a big problem, that at some point you need help. You need to be able to collaborate with other people. And so that is exactly what he did. He went ahead and opened collaboration so that other people can look what he was doing and help him out. So he needed indeed a community of like-minded people to make the process faster and even better, the system faster and better. Right? So these are, of course, little pieces, little hints of the growth mindset. And what impact did he have? Well, as you know, Linux is huge. So Linux is used pretty much everywhere in the tech world, from servers, desktops, embedded systems, even your Android phone, and maybe also some of your devices you have at home, they run on Linux. Okay, so that's the impact that one person, one programmer had on the world that we live in. All of that because of the growth mindset. And the other programmer that is not as famous as Linus is Grace Hopper. Grace was the developer of the programming language COBOL. So COBOL was the first high-level programming language pretty much ever created, and was created by this amazing lady. And the great thing about Grace Hopper that shows, at least to me, how brilliant in so many ways she was, but she understood this growth mindset, is that she had this saying, which is, it's easier to ask forgiveness than it is to get permission. That is totally growth mindset person, a type of mentality, because it's saying, well, just go and do it. Go and learn it. And if you make mistakes, you can apologize and ask for forgiveness later. Okay, that's the mentality. And of course, she was an innovator. She took initiative to do things, to learn things, to get the job done. What is her legacy? Programming language, which, by the way, is still used to this day by many financial institutions such as banks and so forth. Besides that, she also worked on compilers and many other things. Now, the next famous computer scientist, or in this case, programmer in the world, this is the oldest one. Her name was Ada Lovelace. She is considered the very first computer programmer in the world. We're talking about 1800s, so this is actually pre-computers as we know them today. Right? This is when things were very mechanical, so a computer was a very huge mechanical thing, and she believed that computers can do more than just do simple calculations. Now, this is 1800s, way before the revolution of IT and computers and all the technology that we know today. She also worked on the first algorithm for a machine. Now, try to imagine 1800s, and things are not as like they are today. There are a lot of limitations, but I would say even audacity, the ingenuity, the brilliance of understanding at a higher level, leveraging this concept of growth mindset, thinking so ahead of her time. 1800s, ladies and gentlemen. So I hope you're seeing the beauty of having this kind of mindset, having this growth mindset, what it leads to. Okay, what's her legacy? Well, she of course pioneered computing. She believed that computers could create music, computers could do art. 1800s, I have to remind you. And today, computers can do all of those things. So that is the power of the growth mindset, which I hope you are starting to see how that will help you in your journey as you continue learning about programming or starting out programming in the tech world. Now, here's something I want you to do. What I want you to do is to look at all of these amazing entrepreneurs, I would say programmers, such as Linus, and then Grace Hopper, and then Ada Lovelace. What I want you to do is to look at what aspect of the growth mindset these individuals demonstrated. We've talked about it, but I want you to think about it and maybe even reiterate by writing or discussing that with somebody. I know it may sound very mundane, but this is important because it is the most important thing when it comes to growth in general. It is the growth mindset. It is all about your mindset. So do these little exercises. These little activities will definitely solidify this idea, which I think it's the most important thing for you to be successful at programming, but also in your life, really. So let's look at this building of your growth mindset, specifically in tech and coding. We talked about mindset being the driver of everything you do, because mindset is the way you perceive the world, is the way you show up in the world, right? Is the way you react or act. So it's essentially the attitude that you establish on how you perceive the world, okay? How you show up and how you perceive the world in general. It is the mentality that you have about things. It's the perspective that you have about things, about your life, about how things work and everything. So again, this is why I think, that's how I define it anyway, that mindset is the driver, right? It is the driver. Mindset is the captain of your ship, if you will. Now, there is another captain of your ship called the imposter syndrome. Now, what is this thing called imposter syndrome? I like to name it the imposter syndrome as the friend enemy, because he is or she is your friend, but also your enemy. And we'll look into that. So first of all, let's look what is this thing called imposter syndrome, because you probably have heard about it before. So the imposter syndrome is the act of getting all the external accolades, all the external feedback from people saying that you are good at something, you have all the credentials, all the skills, everything, but you yourself don't believe that to be true. Okay, so despite all this evidence, you still don't believe that it's true that you're good at what you do. Now, this is a very common thing, this sense of feeling that you are a fraud. Okay, so that is what the imposter syndrome is. And a lot of people actually have it. Even the most famous people, the most accomplished people do have still this thing called the imposter syndrome. And that's the reason why I call it the friend enemy, the friend enemy, the friend enemy. I think that's probably sounds better. Let's look at some common symptoms of the imposter syndrome. And some of them are here. So for instance, the constant chronic self-doubt, it's one of them. The feeling like you are intellectual fraud, as I mentioned. Can't believe it's not possible that you are this good, that you have these skills or abilities. That cannot be true. I mean, who am I? Right? That's the question already. And the inability to accept your skills where you are and attribute that to luck. To say, it was timing, good timing. That's why I was able to accomplish these things. So there's never a point where you say, well, yes, I do have those skills. I've done this. I worked really hard. So I actually deserve this and I have the skills, right? So there's always this sense of like, no, it's luck. It's good timing. Something happened. I was given this. Okay. So minimizing your hard work. But at the center of everything, there is you and your skills. But you don't see that as being valid, yet everybody else sees that as being valid. So these are the main symptoms of the imposter syndrome. So again, you could have all these skills like good at critical thinking, coding superstar, you could be data analyst, you could have problem solving skills, you could have communication skills, code, everything. But you still think, yes, that is true, but I'm not sure. I don't think that's true. Everybody else says so, and I have all the indication that should be true, but still you don't believe in it. Going back to really tell you that this is such a common thing, I have the same issue as anybody else. So I'm fortunate enough to have taught over 250,000 students all over the world, right? In my courses and so forth. Grateful for that. But there are days, when I think, I'm such an imposter. It's not possible. How? Maybe, no, it's not. No, that's not true. It cannot be. Well, no, this was luck. Maybe something. Oh my goodness. What? I think they will find out that I'm a fraud, that I don't know anything, what's going to happen? Even after 250,000 students and more, and I'm fortunate and grateful for that. This is not to boost my ego. I still feel the same way. Every time I turn on the camera as such and I have to talk about something, I still feel this imposter syndrome. So we all have it. Doubt yourself. Do I have anything? Do I know anything? Maybe they'll find out and boot me out and say you're nothing, right? So these fears, these feelings, these thoughts really come over you. All of us, right? Most of us at least. Maybe you are special, you don't have that. Now, the question here is, because we know this is a human condition, it really will happen to all of us. It happens to all of us. The question is then, how do we indeed overcome the imposter syndrome? Because we've got to wrestle with it. So the way I look at it is, so here's you, and you have all these great skills that you have, even though you may not believe that you have those, right? The imposter syndrome. You have all these skills. You understand about framework, databases, object-oriented programming, source control, everything. You know all of these things, yet you still have issues. Imposter syndrome is still there. So one of the ways to overcome imposter syndrome is awareness. You just have to be aware that this is just a condition. This is something that all of us have. And just be aware of it. Realizing that it's going to be there and it's not necessarily a bad thing. The most important thing is that you shouldn't internalize it too much. You shouldn't listen to it too much, because that is what brings you down to the fixed mindset. Just be aware of it and let it go. Meaning acknowledge it, that it's there, don't ignore it, and trust that the world's verdict, it is indeed the verdict. Because if the world is telling you that you're good at something, other than your mother, then you probably are good at something. So distinguishing between the imposter syndrome and the ego is very important. Here are some other strategies for overcoming imposter syndrome. So you have all these skills and we have these issues. So number one is to recognize achievement. Now, this is the hardest part, I think, for most of us, because recognizing your achievements means that you have to boast your achievements. That's not true. Recognizing your achievements simply means to say, I did that. That was a good thing that I did today or this month or this year. And that's okay. And celebrate that. It's important to celebrate your achievements because that is how you circumvent the imposter syndrome. To say, I did this, and that's okay to say that. The other thing is to be able to always document your progress, to have a success log that allows you to put into paper somewhere where you can always go back and look at your progress. It's very important because once you have that, it's written, it's documented, the imposter syndrome is going to have a really hard time to make you feel as an imposter. And of course, sharing your feelings. I know feelings, but it's important to share your feelings about the feeling of the imposter syndrome when it comes in with your peers, people that you trust, your coworker or friends, and so that they know, hopefully can help you walk through it. And also, as you speak, as you embrace these feelings and you discuss with people, you're going to be able to see that it's just an imposter syndrome and move past it. Okay? And the most important thing is to internalize and keep understanding that learning is indeed a process. Coding is a process, and it does take time. It's not an instantaneous thing that you go ahead and do and become good at it. As anything, you just have to put the time, and setbacks are indeed part of the game, part of the process, and be okay with that. Here is another activity I would like you to do. This is what I call the achievement board creation. The idea here is to create a visual personal growth thing so you can always go back to it. Okay, so you can put soft skills, for instance, that's where you're learning, algorithms, build a back end, all these things that you are doing, have done, write them down, put there somewhere where you can visually see. Because what this will do, it will make sure that you have this visual personal growth and achievement board. It's there. And so if it's there, you see it, you recognize it, the imposter syndrome, it's not going to be able to make you feel as an imposter. So in this case here, you can use digital board, you can use Trello, Pinterest, or even a physical board to add all these things. And all you do, you just pin all your achievements, all of your positive feedback and milestones regularly. That's very important. It has to be a regular event. That way you have a history, you have a timeline that you can go to and see all those achievements. Okay, go ahead and do this little activity and let me know how that goes. Now we're going to talk about some of the tools for setting your mindset right when it comes to coding, programming, and learning in general. This is how I like to envision this. So there's you in the middle, and then you have the fixed mindset as well as the growth mindset. Now, these two are part of you. They will always be part of you. The idea here is that we're trying to make the growth mindset more of part of you than the other one. But in between those two, we have what we call the battleground. I call this the battleground because this is where the battle really happens. Why? Because these two are always the opposite. They always dancing together, and you're in the middle. And so you're trying to juggle, per se, deal with this turmoil that I call the battle dance. And so we need tools that will help us create the space for us to be able to cultivate, in this case, the correct mindset needed for you to be able to become the best coder, the best developer, the best DevOps, the best whatever it is that you're trying to do in the tech, the best of the best. And it's very possible. Having clarity drives you to have direction, which drives you to then have confidence. That is what confidence is. Confidence is the ability to know what to do, not necessarily know the result, the end result, but knowing that you can always figure something out to get to the right result in the end. That's where confidence comes from. It doesn't come from knowing everything, but it comes from, again, the growth mindset. Okay? there are different mindset practices that people practice all over the world, developers or non-developers, musicians, technicians, what have you. And the first one that is the most famous one, popular, and I've used it many times, is journaling. And there is mindfulness. There is exercise. Okay, one of my favorites. And some people do affirmations, others do meditation, and so forth. So these are small practices that you can use to make it so that the mindset shift continues to grow in favor of the growth mindset. Let's look at journaling for growth. Journaling is one of my favorite because it has a lot of benefits, right? The first benefit is it allows you to reflect on daily experiences. When you journal, you are actually writing down the things that have happened on that day, how you felt, and so forth. By doing that, you are acknowledging achievements. That's very important because acknowledging things that you've done, that you've been doing, positively or negatively, in this case, we are getting closer to removing the imposter syndrome, which is the main goal. And of course, in this acknowledging of achievement, what allows us to do also is to learn from the setbacks, because any great achievement, of course, comes with a plethora of setbacks, right? So learning from setbacks, that means you have to look at what happened today or yesterday, for instance, and see the things that you didn't do quite so well and learn from them. And the other tool is meditation and mindfulness, or mindfulness and meditation. Now, this doesn't mean you have to be doing the hardcore meditation and all these things. It simply means you want to do something that is indeed brings you down, brings your whole body to a different state of relaxation and reflection. Okay, so it's good for you, it's good for your mind, it's good for the way you are going to be able to carry yourself in the world. Because now you have to stay still and present in a moment as you reflect on your day. One of the things I like about affirmations, you will directly combat the negative self-talk that most of us usually have in the back of our mind, which is part of the imposter syndrome, really. It boosts your confidence because now you keep reaffirming certain affirmations, saying them, which are positives. So it helps you understand, consume those affirmations to be true, which then rewire the way you think, your thought patterns. It becomes almost like a pattern interrupt when you have those negative self-talk, but when you have those affirmations, you are suppressing those thoughts, those bad thoughts, those negative thoughts, to bring back the positive thoughts. And the great thing about affirmation is that it takes your mind out of the routine. I should have said routine. There was my mistake. Because you are taking away from the negativity, you're putting in positivity. And of course, it also gives you time to learn from setbacks and accept those setbacks, not in a negative way, but in a more positive way. Now, we can do a lot of different activities. Of course, I would like you to do the journaling for growth activity. What I want you to do is to set up a digital or a physical journal and commit to regular entries. So every day, what you would say, for instance, it's something like, today I learned X, Y, and Z. A challenge I faced, X, Y, and Z. I felt proud when I did X, Y, and Z. Okay, now these things may seem so mundane, so trivial. It's almost like, why would I do that? Why don't I just go and brute force myself into coding? Believe me, I've done that too, right? Brute forcing everything, but it doesn't work because you're not helping your mindset to be able to recover from the day's life and embrace this idea that you can actually learn. You are learning, acknowledge it, but you have to have a system for you to be able to actually do it and see results. So this is what I want you to get started doing. Make it a habit of journaling your progress, your challenges, as well as your growth as you learn things, especially coding. Okay, let's look at the summary of what we've learned in the past few lessons. So we learned a lot about growth versus fixed mindset. Okay, so now you should have this solid understanding of the difference between growth mindset and the fixed mindset, as well as understanding the battles that you will have with the imposter syndrome, which is something that is very real and you should be aware of it so that you know how to deal with it, right? How to suppress it. So I've given you a few activities, a few exercises and other tools to help you really set your mind straight, so that you can become the best at what you do, which is exactly what you need to do. Now, again, I have to repeat, I understand this may seem something very unnecessary, but believe me, this is very, very much necessary. About journaling, I have to tell you, okay, speaking of journaling, I just want to show you that this is something that I actually do. Okay, I've done for many years. These are different journals, and I put, as you can see here, those are the years. Okay, so you don't have to get anything complex like this, but it's important to have something where you can write down your ideas, what are you doing, what you have done, and so forth. Okay, so this is just an example to show you. There's another one here. This is 2021, kind of hard to see. And I have, this is 2017. Earlier years, as you can see there, and this is 2028. Okay, so this is just to show you that I actually do what I preach, and I hope you start doing, because journaling, it is indeed what helped me to grow fast in programming, in my life, and in business and everything. So it's a really good skill to maintain this growth mindset alive. All right, I hope you enjoy this, and I'll see you next time. Okay, so welcome back. Previously, we talked about building a growth mindset in coding. So we learned about the fixed versus the growth mindset. So we understand how those two work, and we also looked at the imposter syndrome, which is very real, and I hope you are able to identify those characteristics when it comes to learning and really in life in general. And now we are going to look at navigating this complex world of learning stuff, because as you know, as programmers, learning is very crucial, because that's all we do as developers. You keep learning and learn some more. So it's a continuous cycle, and it's important to have some tools that will help you in the journey of learning to program, learning coding, learning tech in general. So that's what we're going to be looking into in this section. All right, so when it comes to learning, there are different ways that we learn, but there are a few techniques, exercises that I think will be helpful for you to learn pretty much anything, especially when it comes to coding. The first one is what we call the active learning, and the next one is spaced repetition, and then we have the Feynman technique, which is one of my favorites. Let's go ahead and look at active learning and how that works. So active learning is the technique that we all use. In fact, I think most of us learn in school, which is the full immersion into a certain subject. So if you want to learn how Python basics works, how the syntax works, instead of just reading a book, instead of just doing one thing, you just immerse yourself to actually start doing stuff, start coding, start to doing exercises, challenges, and all these different things. So the benefits of immersion, or in this case of active learning, is that there's a lot of practice. So you're actually doing things because it's all about hands-on, which allows you to solidify concepts quicker because of the nature of the hands-on approach. But also it enhances the problem-solving skills. So here are some examples of active learning. When you build projects, that is part of active learning because you are actively doing something, as well as when you do coding challenges and when you are a part of an open source project, because now you have to do things, you have to be learning things actively, you have to be fully involved in whatever it is that you're doing. So next we're going to talk about spaced repetition and what that is. So spaced repetition allows you to, first of all, learn something, and then once you've learned this thing, you have to review the thing that you learned, solidify those concepts, and then you continue learning, okay, and repeat the cycle. Now, this is wonderful because it gives you space, first of all, for your brain to breathe, but also to go back to what you've just learned to make sure you solidify those concepts before you move on. So it's a constant iteration of going forward, and it always feels like going backward, but not really, because you're going back to revise what you just learned. It's really powerful, and you keep learning in this process. So as you know, coding involves an array of concepts that you need to learn, right? In this case here with spaced repetition, this is how you would do it in coding in terms if you wanted to master. So day one, you would look into variable declaration, and then day two, you would look how loops work. But then when you go to day 4, for instance, you will go back to day 1 and revisit that concept, and so on. So it's always going forward and backward, forward and backward. And again, it seems as though you are going backwards and forward and backwards, but not really. You're actually moving forward because you're learning these concepts and going back to solidify those concepts. And another example is if you want to learn algorithms, for instance, you would use the same technique, but now you will break down those concepts into smaller pieces, and you would always learn the piece 1 and then review the previous pieces of concepts that you've learned so that you solidify those concepts as you go. So it's a simple concept, but it's a very powerful one. So try that out. My favorite one is actually called the Feynman technique. Feynman was actually a very interesting character. He was a theoretical physicist, a very fun, smart guy. So if you are interested in learning more about Feynman, just Google Feynman and you will learn more about him. So fascinated by his way of learning. Anyway, so the Feynman technique is very simple because it encompasses exactly what I actually do when I want to learn a new programming language, or even just a language, spoken language, or anything really for that matter. And so the technique goes as follows. So first of all, you go ahead and learn something. And then once you learn it, you have to learn it with the concept that you need to go ahead and be able to break it down enough so you can explain that technique in simple terms. So the idea is simple. If you want to know whether you understand a concept really well, try to explain it to an 8-year-old or to a grandma, somebody who doesn't have any background on that concept. And that's when you will know that you actually understand it enough to be able to explain to somebody. And I love this technique. I've been using it forever, as long as I can remember. But also, I didn't even know that it was an actual technique until I came across the Feynman technique. So it's really good because it allows you to also see, as you break the concept down enough in a simpler form, it helps you see the knowledge gap that you may also have. Okay, so if you can do that, that means you really understand this concept or this discipline that you're trying to teach. And of course, you rinse and repeat. So you keep doing the same thing, new concepts, new techniques, or whatever it is that you're trying to learn, and go from there. Now, again, it's my favorite technique because obviously it really forces you to understand the very basics of a concept. So there you have it. By integrating these techniques, so we have active learning, we have spaced repetition, and the Feynman technique, you add these two together, then you are pretty much unstoppable. You have a tool that will always serve you well because you'll have something where you can use something that you can use to learn programming, to learn really hard concepts. All right, so go ahead and pick one and go from there. Let's go ahead and talk about setting and achieving coding goals. Goal setting is very important because it gives you a target that you're going towards. If you don't set a goal, it's going to be very difficult, number one, to measure your progress, and let alone to have the discipline to continue moving forward when things get hard. So I look at goal as your GPS, the internal GPS that leads you, guides you to where you want to get to. Okay, because you want to get somewhere, so you need some sort of directions. So setting goals will give you the power to actually get to where you want to get to. Whether you want to learn coding, whether you want to learn very hard concepts or achieve whatever you want to achieve in life, setting goals, it is the number one priority. Now, there are many different frameworks or techniques used for setting goals. And one of the most popular is SMART goals, in this case in coding. So what does SMART stand for? So SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. I really like SMART goals technique because, first of all, if you want to get anywhere, if you want to have a solid goal that you can actually move towards, you have to have a specific goal. I want to learn Python. That is very specific because you're not saying I want to learn coding. I want to learn how to program. I want to learn a specific thing. The good thing about being specific is that we can move on to the next step, which is to create something that is measurable. So if you say, I want to learn Python, for instance, if that's the case, you can start measuring the progress by breaking it into smaller, achievable pieces, milestones. And these smaller, achievable milestones are relevant to the bigger goal, which is to learn Python. And most importantly of everything has to be time bound. If you say, I want to learn Python, is it in a weekend, in a year? Is it learning Python for the next 10 years, for your entire life? And that could be true, but we need to be time bound. You have to say, I have this amount of time to learn X, Y, and Z. Because what happens is if you don't have anything that is time bound, then you won't have those bounds that you need in order to achieve something, because it's all just open-ended. And as we know, if you have something that is totally open-ended, most likely you're never going to finish it, right? So give yourself goals. This is what I'm going to do. Be specific, because then you have ways to measure that specificity, and it's going to be achievable because you're cutting into smaller pieces. You have a plan and it has to be relevant to the main goal. In this case, could be I want to learn Python, and time bound. How long will it take? I want to dedicate my life, my time to do this. Again, the example, I want to learn Python, and you can say, I will learn the basics of Python by completing one module per week, that time bound again, from an online course, aiming to build a simple application in 6 weeks. Now, you can see that it's very important. We talk about per week. That is time bound. In 6 weeks, that is also time bound. We're saying we have specific time deadline for me to do X, Y, and Z. Very specific again. I will learn the basics of Python, not just programming, the basics of Python by doing what? Completing one module, you being relevant, you being making sure that everything is measurable, because now you can say, if I said one module per week, the measurement here is that each week I need to finish one module, right? So it goes back to being relevant to the main goal. Aiming to build, that's the end goal, a simple application, something you're going to be doing, relevant again to what you want to accomplish in 6 weeks. There's your time bound. So if you use this technique, if you use this framework, it's going to be way simpler to justify the time that you have to put in to learn something, because you have a direction, you have that GPS, and you can move forward. So this here follows to the T, the SMART framework, the SMART acronym. The next step is to learn how to break down whatever it is that you're trying to learn. For instance, if you want to learn algorithms is such a vast subject. You need to really be intentional on how you're going to learn, right? Use all the techniques that we talked about, but most importantly, understand that the most important thing, the first thing you have to think about is, how can I simplify this process, right? So the idea is always to break down into smaller concepts. So you have concept 1, concept 2, 3, 4, and so forth. And you have to follow that. Use that with the SMART framework. Then you are pretty much golden, because now you have a framework. It's all about having a tool or a framework that will help you get to where you want to get to. And that is the difference between being a person who actually learns something and masters something versus a person who learns everything and masters none. Okay, now let's talk about resilience and adaptability. As entrepreneurs, as coders, as programmers, software engineers, as DevOps, whatever it is that you want to call yourself, resilience and adaptability is the key for everything. I like this diagram here I found online because it encompasses everything what resilience really is. Optimism, self-belief, control of self, willingness to adapt, very important. Willingness to be flexible, ability to solve problems, emotional awareness, social support, sense of humor. As you know, I have a really great sense of humor. So, but it's important to really put all of this into perspective because these are the main skills. These are the main, I think, the most important things you have to think about whenever you want to learn anything, specifically programming, etc. For some of you may think, okay, I have to look into emotional awareness, social support. That is just so much. I just want to learn to code. And that's true, but that is not the whole truth. Right? See, I made a mistake when I got started in programming. All I needed to learn was the technical side of things, right? Learn programming, learn the hard skills. But that's not the whole truth. Had I understood the foundation of anything, really, which is what I'm showing you, what I'm sharing with you, I would have probably been where I wanted to be way faster than anybody else. Because it is indeed what you need to understand before you even attempt to become or learn programming, is to have this foundation. Because if you don't have this foundation, everything's going to be hard, because things will be hard, right? Take the time to really absorb this and don't just watch this so that you can watch it and then forget about it. Come back to it. Go back to the learning techniques, right? Come back to it and take notes on things that resonate with you, or things that you think, oh, I should try this so that hopefully I can learn more faster. I can become more of an active learner. Okay, so take these techniques and actually implement them. Okay, that's how you're going to learn, and that's how you're going to get better. Don't brush this off thinking I need to just go to the technical things. Start here, really. Go through this and hone all of this in. All right, now it's your turn. What I want you to do is to look at all the things that we talked about, especially techniques. Right? I want you to think, okay, which technique resonates better with you? Right? And I also want you to implement these SMART goals for coding and create a plan, a learning plan. Now, I'm assuming since you're here, you may want, or you are starting in your coding journey, or you have done coding for many years, you are a professional, but you still want to keep learning. Create a learning plan. Go ahead and sit down and create a learning plan as I showed you. Okay, so go ahead and do that, and I'll see you next. Let's talk about building resilience and adaptability in coding. The truth of the matter is, coding and learning, those are very hard things to do. And so hard to where some people just give up. They don't want to do it. And it takes time. But what is important to understand, and one thing that I would like to share with you, which I use in my own life, my own journey, is to never go into a situation thinking that's going to be easy. Because if you go in always thinking that's going to be easy, you are not going to be able to weather the issues that arrive, the difficulties, because it was supposed to be easy. And so when hard things happen, you have to give up because this is too much for me. The mindset here, it's always to assume that it's going to be hard. And this is not to make you feel as though whatever you want to learn, especially in coding, it's just too difficult to where you can't tackle. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is go in knowing that you're going to have difficulties that you have to pass through. That is the mindset. So the idea here is to equip you with all the tools, the right tools that you need to make sure you are able to overcome those setbacks, because they will come. And when it comes to coding, the setbacks come in a form of bugs, errors that you get in your code, and many other things that can happen, right? So how do you combat that? How do you make sure that you can develop a resilience when it comes to coding? The first one is to make sure that you set realistic goals. Make sure you say, okay, I'm going to learn X, Y, and Z in this amount of time using this SMART technique. and make sure that you are measuring the progress as you go through it, and also making sure that you're checking in with against your mindset, which should be by now, hopefully, the growth mindset, right? To realize that you have to actually work at things, have the goal, and work at things, breaking things down to get to your goal. It doesn't have to be something large, very small goals, very targeted, using the SMART technique, as I said. But those goals have to be realistic in a sense that if the goal is too great to be accomplished in the amount of time that you have set yourself to do it, obviously you're setting yourself up for failure. If you say, I want to learn everything that is possible to learn about algorithms, and you give yourself 2 days, it is possible. I'm sure there are people who can do that, but realistically speaking, that is not going to be fun, or that's not going to be productive. Setting realistic goals, it's very important. And make sure to focus on the learning process instead of perfection. Most often, when we're learning things, we have this image of where we want to go, which is very important. It's part of setting goals. It's part of envisioning where you want to be next. But sometimes we may end up having these expectations that are not realistic because we want things to be perfect. So just focus on the process, the learning process, instead of the perfection. Don't be perfect. Just keep going. And with that, we tie in the practicing of self-compassion. Now, it's very important because when you go through difficult times, when you're learning coding and things happen, there's this bug that it's just there. You don't understand this concept. Things are not working. You're coding and you're just following exactly what the instructor said, and things are not working on your machine, or something is not just quite right. And it's very easy to start this internal conflict with yourself that doesn't really help you to move that. So self-compassion essentially means to be okay with where you're at, and don't beat yourself up if you are not progressing as fast as you wish you would, or you were hoping you would, or things are not working quite as you expected. It's okay. Just breathe and say, this is where I'm at right now. I'm going to breathe, drink some tea, go for a walk, and I'm okay, and I get back to it. Now let's talk about the role of adaptability in tech. What is adaptability? So adaptability is when you're able to roll with the flow, right? To make sure that if something changes, you can quickly adapt, you can quickly move with it. Okay, you can adjust, especially for us who are in tech, because as you know, things change really fast in tech. New technologies come along, new frameworks come along, new programming languages come along, new programming concepts and paradigms come along. And so we have to adapt really fast. As an instructor, a programmer as well, I have to learn things really fast, really fast. I'm talking about sometimes in a matter of weeks, right? And it is part of being able to adapt, to be able to survive in this industry. So it is another important feature, I would say, component to becoming good at coding, good at learning to code, and becoming this well-rounded developer that you want to be. Now, here are some strategies for overcoming coding challenges. Because you will have them. But also, that is the beauty of coding. That's the beauty of this science and art that is coding. Problem-solving framework. You have to have some sort of a framework, a system that will always help you along with coding. And I hope you understand and you're seeing the reoccurring thing that I always talk about here. Framework, technique, way of thinking, mindset. So these are the foundations for you to always rely on, because we need something that we rely on in order for us to be able to move forward. If you don't have those foundations, those techniques, those tools, when things get hard, which they always do, it's really easy to just give up and move on to something else. And so it becomes this habit of always, when things get hard, you just give up. Right? And 5 years go by, you realize you haven't really mastered anything. It happens, to a lot of people. And so, we need to have those techniques to help us move forward. That is the main thing here, because coding is a science and an art in itself. Having an approach to how you solve certain problems is very important. Now, in coding, you could have a system approach to debugging, for example, or to a problem solving, and you can use something like the rubber duck method. The rubber duck method is pretty cool, actually. Essentially, it's very simple. It's kind of silly. If you are working on something and you have some issues like bugs or something and you can't figure out, you could have, for instance, something. Let me see, what can I find? You could go ahead and have your friend Mr. Android here and just talk through your problems. Whatever you're having problems in your code, you can talk to and say, hey, this line of code did this and that and that, and I did this and X, Y, and Z, and then whenever I click play or run, the code does that. And it's very silly, I know, but it helps, because what you're doing, you're reiterating your brain, you're having to think through the problem you're having, and before you know it, you may already have the answer, because you are walking through the same thing, right? The process that got you to where you are, and you could spark the answer like that. Okay, so try it out. It's a real good technique. And the other strategy for overcoming coding challenges is to look at learning not as failure, but as an opportunity to learn. And that is a big one, because we don't want to get into the habit of always beating ourselves up, of always labeling things that don't go well in coding as a failure, because we don't want that kind of language, because it really puts us down, and then we're not in the mode of learning and thriving. So look at these setbacks, all these things that happen, not as failures, but as an opportunity for you to go and learn even more. So here is an activity I would like you to do. I want you to keep a debugging diary for about a week. So you will document bugs or errors that you get. Document the steps you took to solve those bugs, to get rid of those bugs, because that is where learning comes, but also it's going to build that history of your successes, which are needed for you to see that you're actually making progress. And write down what you've learned from those challenges. This is crucial because, again, ties back to this reflection part of learning, which is very important. Not only that, but also builds the confidence that you are making progress. So doing this, again, it's going to bring back this growth mindset, this reliability that you have in yourself, that you can actually do things and you're making progress. And it's going to be, because it's going to be a concrete reminder of your problem solving, progress, and resilience. Remember, progress, resilience, confidence all comes from tracking everything down, seeing where you came from, right? You were here, perhaps, right? Low here, and then you start stacking up skills. And that is how you go from zero, really, to becoming master of programming. So in conclusion here, we talked about resilience and adaptability, and we see that these are the key to surviving and thriving in the tech world. I hope these were helpful, and go ahead and start implementing these as well in your journey. And I'll see you next. Let's go ahead and look at the overview of what we've learned in week 2. So we've learned a few things. The first one is effective learning strategies, and also how to set and achieve coding goals, as well as building resilience and adaptability in coding. So I encourage you to look at setbacks as the stepping stones to really to remain agile in your learning journey by fostering resilience and adaptability and all the tools now you have of learning coding and new things in general. You will be setting yourself up for success, right? So think about this, do the activities, and hone into these fundamentals before you even start the coding process. If you haven't started, but if you already are a coder, a programmer, a developer, software developer, then I hope this will remind you, or at least give you another outlet that will help you become even better at what you do. So before we go to the next session, what I want to do is I want some commitment from you. Yes, so what we'll do here is you're going to have or write a commitment letter, and this is going to be yours. You don't have to share with anybody, but I want you to do this because this will give you this pressure of, okay, these are things that I need to actually do. All right, so just bear with me here. I want you to write a commitment letter to yourself. In that letter, I want you to put into details your goals, whatever it is that you want to do, to learn in coding. Make a plan, as well as the strategies you intend to use to overcome challenges. So this goes back to what we've talked about, because in learning, in programming, in all these things where we are trying to achieve, you will have those challenges. And so write down the strategies you're going to be using to overcome those setbacks, those challenges. Okay? And once you've written this letter, it doesn't have to be a long letter. I want you to actually sign it. Put a date and sign it. Do this, okay? Put a date, sign it, and say you will commit to doing this. Go ahead and do that, and I'll see you next. All right, welcome to week 3, and let's look at the structure of where we are in the progress here. So we first look at building a growth mindset in coding in week 1. We then look at navigating the learning curve in all of these techniques to solidify your learning process. And now we're going to go ahead and look at leveraging community and networks. The power of community. Community is one of the most important components in your journey to learning to code, because the community is going to give you the boost, the platform to guide you, to support you in your journey. So having support is indeed one of the most important things. It's essentially your village, right? And so that's why I'm going to talk about community. One of the benefits of having a community or being a part of a community is the accelerated growth and learning. If you have a community that you trust, you feel free to share and learn, then your growth is going to be exponential. The reason being is because there are the people who are also in the same journey, they're like-minded, and they all have different things to add to your journey. That is the beauty of having community. That is the reason why I started a community. If you are watching me from somewhere where you're not in the community, well, I do have a community of like-minded people where I share things like this. Everybody shares, and I have exclusive courses and all this great thing, right? So it's important because it fosters growth fast. So if you want to grow fast, you gotta have a community. There are many communities online. The biggest one is Stack Overflow. This is the place where you most likely have been if you have been coding for a while. It's a place where you can find answers to certain technical problems, bugs, and so forth that you may be encountering. You have GitHub, which is a place where you find a lot of different repositories where people collaborate in projects and so forth. And you have LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a place more professional where you can go and find certain groups that pertain to coding or whatever else you are trying to learn and achieve, right? And of course, all these communities have their rules of engagement. But in general, to be part of community means to be able to contribute to a community, to be able to learn from that community, but also give back. The most important thing is that you have to learn how to ask clear questions. You have to learn and be a contributing member of that community by answering questions, giving guidance and resources and so forth. And of course, sharing what you're learning, your progress, and all of that. So that is the part of the community. Because sometimes we may feel like, oh, I don't have anything to contribute here because I'm a beginner, or all of these insecurities that we may have. But that is not true. We all have something to contribute, and always find a way to contribute in a community, because that's how a community grows, and that's how we all learn. One thing I like about community is the fact that you have so many people with different skills, different ways of viewing the world, different frameworks and so forth. But when you come together, you are as one, you help each other. And with that, you have this ability to network with each other. You meet new people that are working on certain projects. You're interested in that project. You can start working together. And you'll be amazed at how many innovations have started through just community. Community, come together, people work together, and then build something amazing. So communities are really, really important. That's the reason why I emphasize the community mindset. Oh, that was my next slide, which is collaborating on projects can lead to learning, innovation, and career changes and opportunity as well. Okay. And most importantly, I almost forgot, it can also help you build portfolio, because if you are learning programming and at some point you will need to have a portfolio so you can show to a potential employer that you have been building something, actually building something, and that will give you an upper hand in terms of being hired and being part of a company that you want to work for. Okay, so week 4, here we come. So what have we learned so far? So far, we talked about building a growth mindset in coding, that first week. And then we look into navigating the learning curve in the second week. We looked at leveraging community in the past week and networks. So now we're going to look at transitioning to tech entrepreneurship. This is one of my favorite parts, because now we're looking at, okay, so you have those skills, or you are acquiring these coding skills. What are you going to do with it? Are you going to go and find a job? Are you going to go and become a freelancer? Are you going to build your own thing, right? Possibilities are endless. Let's go ahead and dive in. Some of you may not consider yourselves as entrepreneurs, and that's okay, but I bet that most of you are actually entrepreneurs. You just don't know it. Let's look at what is an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur, in my mind, is all about an attitude. It's about the attitude. It's about skills. It's about behaviors. So that's what an entrepreneur is to me. Attitude, the way you view the world. Skills, all of the abilities you have, you've learned, you're learning, striving to become. And of course, behaviors, this resilience, adaptability, all these things. That's what makes an entrepreneur. So if you are in this camp of the attitude, you have the right attitude towards the growth mindset instead of the fixed mindset. You are seeking skills. You have certain skill set. You want to solve a problem, and you have certain behaviors, adaptability, as an example, then you are an entrepreneur. You probably just don't know this. Right? These are the keys that breathe vision, that breathe perseverance, as well as flexibility, because this makes an ideal entrepreneur. You have to have a vision, so that way, if you know a skill, have a skill, you can act upon those skills and build something that will solve a problem. And you can see this all over the place. Now, most of us know of this big entrepreneurs such as Mark Zuckerberg or Jeff Bezos. Some of them are technical entrepreneurs, others are not. But all of them started with one thing. They have a skill. If they didn't have that skill, they would go and acquire that skill. And sometimes meant to go and find people who have those skills. And that is indeed a skill in and of itself to accomplish a goal. Right? So they had vision. They had issues, they had challenges, setbacks, but they persevere because they knew that the vision is there and they want to work towards that. Okay, flexibility, things happen, right? They had to adapt quickly and go with the flow, but still with that GPS, with that goal in mind. And most importantly, entrepreneurs are big learners. They are constantly learning. If you fall into any of these categories, at least 3 of them, then you are an entrepreneur, whether you like it or not. Now, how do we develop this entrepreneurial mindset in coding? One thing you may not realize is that the tool that you will have, or you have, which is of coding, is one of the most amazing tools because it allows you to innovate using creativity. Think about it this way. You're learning to code not just for the sake of coding. You're learning to code because you want to build, hopefully, something. I want you to start looking at code as a building block to building something, to solving a problem, to solving somebody's problem. Okay? And that's exactly what all of these big companies, or small companies, or any entrepreneur you know, they are solving a problem. And so you have this tool coding, programming, software engineer that can allow you to build something to solve somebody else's problem. So you are solving, again, goes back to solving something. You're solving a problem. It so just happens that the problem you're using code. And once you have gone through the process of learning programming and you get to a certain point where you're able to build things, you will see that now you have to learn to be creative. It's very counterintuitive. When you start programming, your focus is to just go through or get through the basics, the syntax, the algorithms, all these things that you need. These are tools. These are things that you need. But once you have all that, you're able to build things. It is the most beautiful thing because now you can build stuff. You can go and solve a problem, right? But also allows you to be creative. And that is the beauty. Now you have this science part of thing, technical science side of thing, and then you have the creativity and mash those together, and then you have this beauty. You can build stuff that people can actually use. And I want you to think about it, right? You can build stuff. And some of you may already have built many things and it just becomes this automatic thing that you don't think as a big deal, but it is a big deal. You're able to solve a problem. And of course, as an entrepreneur, you have to learn to deal with resilience and risk-taking. Good entrepreneurs are aware of this, may not be completely aware of this, but they know that they have to be resilient and they have to do some risk-taking in order to get their vision to the finish line. And the process is always the same. It goes through the iteration, just like the iteration in software. You iterate through until you have something your users are very happy with, right? If you build an application, an app, for instance, the first iteration may be just okay because the users can use it. And as you get feedback from the users, then you better it, make it better, add more features or polish the features that it has until the users are happy. And that is the same process, right? You're taking a risk by starting something. You have to be resilient because sometimes things don't work out as you imagine they would. And that is part of developing this entrepreneurial mindset in coding. Now, how do we go from coder to a tech entrepreneur? Now, the idea here is very simple. As you know, you have coder on one side, and then on the other side, you have the entrepreneur. Now, I'm separating these two because I want to make a point here. But I believe that a coder is already an entrepreneur. Whether you believe it or not, that is my take, okay? And so there's a gap. There may be a gap between these two. You're a coder and there's the entrepreneurship on the other side. Now, this gap here is called the new skills. Because even though I say a coder is already an entrepreneur, right? But there's some skills that you need to have in order to become an actual entrepreneur. And, I find it fascinating because I look at myself, for instance, I love to code. I love to build stuff, but I'm not really good at finding problems to solve, right? And so one of the exercises that I've been doing is to look for problems, asking friends, family and friends, and looking online, just small problems that I can solve, right, with code, the skills I have. All right, so let's look at the skills that are needed really to merge this gap between being a coder and the actual entrepreneur. The first one is understanding or learning how to rapidly prototype something. You have a problem or you found a problem, you need to quickly prototype it, code it real fast, the very basics, bare bones, and you have that so you can show somebody, say, hey, is this something that you can use to solve problem X, Y, and Z? They say yes or no, and you go and redo it. If it's good, that is the problem that you're solving, and then you can move on, right? The other thing is to have a really good technical insights of how things work. So essentially, you have to have this realm of technological insight of how to solve those problems using technology, using code, right? So you need to understand the nuts and bolts of technology, which will then allow you as an entrepreneur to make informed decisions about product development, tech stack selection, and the scalability of that solution. And communication, it's huge. Now, if you're a coder, you know how to code. You speak the language of code. Now, an entrepreneur has to be both, sometimes, not always. You need to learn how to communicate the code to other people who don't quite understand, may not understand the technicalities of this product that you're trying to build, like the stakeholders or the users and so forth. So communication, learning how to effectively technically communicate with non-technical people, it is very important because you have to deal with a plethora of people, other developers, managers, stakeholders, as I said, and a group of people, right? A village of people to get something from an idea to an actual product. So communication is key. So these are the skills I believe, there are many, but these are the main ones I believe you need to hone in once you have the coder side of things done to become a true, powerful entrepreneur. So it comes back to this idea that I like, I'm trying to put together really, is this idea of a well-rounded, a Renaissance man or person, a coder. That's the idea, a well-rounded person, a well-rounded developer or a coder, software programmer, whatever. That's all the same thing anyway. To become a well-rounded coder or developer, you have to have those skills. And these skills are part of the puzzle. I want you to put together your entrepreneurial vision. So come up with, for instance, a problem you can solve with code, right? So if you have no problems to solve, go ahead and ask friends and family what they struggle with. What are the things they wish, they had, they were available to solve a certain problem. There are so many things. And other things you can do, like I said earlier, you can also start developing this habit of writing down problems, at least 2 problems every day. Just have a piece of paper on your phone or whatever and write down problems that you have during the day. For instance, you could say, every day I want to eat healthy, but I find it difficult because I'm on the run, and I wonder if there's something I could build that will help me come up with, for instance, fun recipes or things I could eat right away from what I have in my fridge. Maybe take a picture of ingredients that are lying around in your kitchen, and then this will spin up a 5-minute quick, healthy recipe and instructions and everything. By the way, actually, I'm giving this away. I built an app for that, which I use every day, right? So look at problems that you have. Small, it doesn't have to be big, something small. And chances are you're going to be able to start solving something for yourself, and then that could lead to solving something for everybody else, okay? So do that, and I want you to map out your own path from coder to entrepreneur. How is that going to look like with the things that I've shown you here, right? So we have the coder here and then the entrepreneur here, and there's the middle here with all the skills that you need to look into to start mastering to get to merge these two. Okay, so how is that going to look like? What is the path going to look like in your own situation? Okay, so with that, we conclude this course on mindset, on how to learn how to code, but how to have all the tools you need to become the best learner, the best coder you can possibly be, but also learn about entrepreneurship, resilience, adaptability, and all these things that we went through in this course. And I hope this was helpful. It wasn't about coding. That is the beauty here. It was about before the coding, or even if you're already a coder, but something that you can implement so you can really ramp up your skills. So I encourage you to actually rewatch these videos as many times as you need, revisit them, and keep a diary where you write down a log of some sort and start implementing small things, right, into your own learning process, into your own process, and see how that works. Right, and keep doing and refining until you find that sweet spot where you can see the progress. Another thought here is that I want you to look at coding as a tool. So a tool is something you use to build something, to facilitate something you want to do. And so use the tool to build something. Don't just code for the sake of it. Build something. And the best way really is to build something that you can use, that somebody uses. It doesn't have to be fancy, small. That's one thing only. Build that, right? So get into that habit of always building or looking at coding as a tool to use to do something, to build something useful. That's what we're doing here, right? All right, here's a closing activity. Launch commitment ceremony. Yes, you made it to the end here, and I want to have this virtual, per se, launch commitment ceremony. So what I want you to do is to commit to taking the next steps to becoming a coder, to becoming even a better coder, programmer. I know I keep saying coder, some people don't like that, but to become a better software developer, to become a better engineer, to become a better DevOps, whatever it is that you are honing in, try to become that, right? So take those steps to becoming the best at it. An entrepreneur, right? Commit to taking those steps to becoming an entrepreneur, a learner, an implementer, and a visionary. Now look at all these keywords and internalize them and commit to some of these, right? Commit to them. Say, okay, this is what I want to do, and I will do it. If you say that, then it's going to happen. If you don't, it's never going to happen, right? Say that, commit to that, and go back to what we've learned, how to go through that process, right? Of getting these tools that I've given you to really make this process of learning as fast, as smooth as possible, and as enjoyable too, because I want you to enjoy the journey of learning to code, or of ramping up your skill sets. Go ahead and do that. And before you go, I want you to do me a favor. I want you to go online and look for Jeff Bezos. Just type in Jeff Bezos 12 questions to live a better life. Think it came from came from a commencement speech he did at Stanford, I believe. Don't quote me on that. But just search for Jeff Bezos 12 questions to live a better life. It will amaze you. I'm not going to go through with you here. I want you to do it. And I want you to read all of those 12 and see which one resonates with you. It is the most beautiful thing I've ever read, and I actually keep it with me in my journals, so every now and then I go and read them. So do that and let me know what you think. Okay, thank you so much. I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you next time. Wow, wonderful. You made it to the end of this course. Tell me, what did you think? Did you learn a lot? Are you excited about this journey? If you've already been programming for a while, what are the things that you can include in your journey? Because the thing about programming, as you may know by now, is that it's something that is a continuous journey. It doesn't quite end, really, which is good. That means we'll always have work until the machines take over. Just kidding. About the bonus. So I put together a bonus for you, which is going to be an ebook about what we've learned in this short course about the foundations of success in coding. So we went through a lot of things, so I figured that I will put together an ebook version for you, which you can have access to if you go to the first link, or second, but mostly first link in the description. Go ahead and check it out. So it's going to be something that you can have with you, you can share with friends, and so forth. If you enjoyed this mini course, if it has been helpful, I'll be really happy if you would leave a comment. Tell me what you have learned, what are you going to be implementing. Like this video and subscribe if not subscribed. As you see, we have a lot of great content here. Thank you so much, and be well. Bye.